Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. This is part 2 for this news report today. It's Tuesday, April 9th, 2013. I'm Darko. Alright, I'm going to continue here. We've kind of covered the Middle East, different parts on the last video, and we'll get into some environmental eco-terrorism and Big Brother news in the second one. There should be about 3 videos. So, before the big quake, Iran's president ordered the speedy launch of 5 new nuclear reactors and before they got hit by an earthquake. There's about 30 people that died, 800 injured. So very timely. This is some pretty sneaky stuff that they do, using HART type technology, bouncing basically high frequencies and that, low frequencies up in the ionosphere, and bouncing them back down, directing them with ground and aerial space satellites. And they can direct energy. I mean, can you imagine doing something like that? So when you see, ooh, they can hook lasers up to drones, or they can shoot down drones with lasers, it's like, what did he freaking do? You know, like that's supposed to be cutting edge. He probably had that in the 80s, if not prior to that. You know, we're talking about this real directed energy. But on top of this, we also just covered, yesterday, that the Nuclear Proliferation Treaty group or administration or organization, they basically said that that they were using their nuclear power for peaceful, electricity uses. And says the earthquake that shook most of Iran earlier today won't slow down its leaders from pursuing its nuclear ambitions. It registered 6.3 on the Richter scale and left 30 dead and 800 injured. So it says here it was just 62 miles from Basra, the city home to Iran's nuclear reactors. This is kind of weird where they take this story, because they say the earthquake is a reminder that international tensions aren't the only dangers of Iran pursuing nuclear technology. Even if it's just nuclear power plants, Iran is the most seismically active nation in the world as it sits on top of a tangle of major fault lines that covers 90% of the country. So there you go. Fukushima, at least 3 of 7 underground chambers leaking radioactive water from the 9th. The New York Times, the operator of Japan's crippled nuclear plant, halted an emergency operation Tuesday to pump thousands of gallons of radioactive water from a leaking underground storage pool after workers discovered that a similar pool to which the water was being transferred was also leaking. Says here, TEPCO says it already stores more than a 250 million tons of radioactive water in hundreds of tanks at the site or in underground pools, and that the amount of runoff could double within 3 years. Increase in babies born with congenital hypothyroidism after Fukushima. The highest levels of I-131 and airborne gross beta were documented in 5 U.S. states on the Pacific Ocean. So we're talking about large amounts of fallout disseminated worldwide from the meltdown in 4 reactors of the Fukushima Daiichi plant in Japan in March 11th, 2011. So just days after the meltdown, what we were talking about, this I-131 concentrations in the U.S. precipitation was measured up 211 times above normal. The number of the congenital hyperthyroid cases in 5 states from March 17th, 2011 was 16% greater than for the same period in 2010. Australia gives environmental okay to uranium mine. Australia on Tuesday gave environmental approval for a new uranium mine in its resource-rich west, with 36 conditions to guard against negative impacts from radiation and other factors. Third major oil spill in a week. Shell pipeline breaks in Texas. Thousands of gallons of oil have spilled from a pipeline in Texas, the 3rd accident of its kind in only a week. Shell Pipeline and a unit of Royal-Dutch Shell shut down their West Columbia, Texas pipeline last Friday after electronic calculations conducted by the response center showed that upwards of 700 barrels had been lost, amounting to almost 30,000 gallons of crude oil. But it says by Monday, Shell spokesman said the inspectors found no evidence of an oil leak, but days later it was revealed that the breach did occur. The U.S. Coast Guard confirmed to Dow Jones on Thursday that 50 barrels of oil spilled from, roughly 50 barrels, from a pipe near Houston, Texas, and entered a waterway that connects to the Gulf of Mexico. Then we have the largest oil refinery in the United States is owned by the Saudi royal family and Anglo-Dutch. At a time when the Obama regime and the petroleum industry are advocating for expanding domestic oil production, it is worth pointing out that the nation's largest refinery is not American-owned.
It goes on here and says the Motiva oil refinery located in Port Arthur, Texas is controlled by Royal Dutch Shell and Saudi Aramco, Aramco, the largest oil company in Saudi Arabia and in the world. Rockefeller buys into Russian oil business. Stephen Clark Rockefeller's UK-based oil company has reached an agreement with VTB Bank to purchase a 100% stake in this TEF Investa for $1 billion. The great recycling con trick, how 12 million tons of your carefully sorted waste is being dumped in foreign landfill sites. It says the environmental agency orders councils to check on their contractors. Waste was being sent to countries including China, Indonesia, and India. So, they said they admitted the waste from the recycling bins is being shipped to countries, including the ones I just mentioned, where it ends up in a landfill mostly. Ministers concede that what happens to the 12 million tons of green waste shipped abroad every year is largely beyond their control. It says the law states that the rubbish should be recycled once it is sent abroad, but DEFRA now admits that in some countries it is simply dumped. Scientists seek to legitimize geoengineering while acknowledging its catastrophic effects. There are still many people who believe that anyone pointing out chemtrails in the sky and asking questions is somehow out of tune with reality, but this is slowly changing as geoengineering and its effects cannot be kept under wraps any longer, so it is not surprising that the first to come out on mainstream media are the so-called experts, playing on the current scientific consensus that the Earth is warming and a climate catastrophe is imminent. They call on geoengineering to be regulated on a global scale. That's most recent news. Now they're saying, oh, it needs to be regulated, right? It needs to be regulated. Global oversight of radical schemes. They could have huge and unintended impacts. Packed nicely into the language of preventing catastrophic incidents and protecting some of the world's most vulnerable people, that's probably them, they argue for a global sign-off by governments. So it says it's interesting to note that this comes from the Hadley Center, the same institution that was the center of the ClimateGate scandal. Some of the most prominent advocates of man-made global warming are working there. The dangers arose in projects that cooled the planet unevenly. In some cases, it caused devastating droughts across Africa, and in others, they increased rainfall in the region but left huge areas of Brazil parched. So, yeah, it was nice to cover this because now that the weather's getting warmer, you can see that they're definitely spraying more. It's like when people start to come outside, they start walking their dogs and going for bike rides or fishing, you notice that they just start hammering us with these aerosols, just relentlessly, every day, day in, day out, stealing the sun away from all of us, humans, animals, whatever. I mean, there really should be a collective lawsuit against these a-holes for what they're doing. Devastating honeybee loss reported across the United States expected to impact food prices. 50% of the domestic honeybee population is dead, the greatest single-year loss of honeybees in the U.S. ever recorded. The dramatic loss of bees is expected to affect consumers. So scientists and beekeepers have been baffled by the colony collapse disorder, CCD, which is characterized by the sudden disappearance of hives' worker population. So they said here it's been affecting bee populations since the 1970s with increased losses since 2006. And you can see stuff in some footage and in movies where they were spraying aerosols, chemtrailing, whatever, back in the 70s, and even that, some black and white films. U.S. plains states brace for more wild weather, actually, snow. So, it says meteorologists said the stormy weather could result from a clash of warm southern air with cold air mass sweeping through the eastern Colorado, where heavy snow in Denver closed the airport and forced the cancellation of 535 flights on Tuesday. Said areas south and east of the snowstorm will see sleet and freezing rain and potential flash flooding. So, yeah, pretty interesting. Hail and stuff, all kinds of crazy stuff. Tornado forecast for North Texas and Nebraska. Well, why is this? Where is this wild weather coming from? Well, probably from all the spraying that they've been doing recently. Climatologists are no Einstein, says successor. Freeman Dyson is a physicist who's been teaching at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton since Einstein was there. When Einstein died in 1955, there was an opening for the title for the most brilliant physicist on the planet. I guess this Dyson has filled it. So when global warming movement came along, a lot of people wonder why he didn't go along with it. So he just said the simple reason is he's a skeptic. I think any good scientist ought to be a skeptic. So it goes on here, and it says here that in the late 70s he got involved with early research on climate change. He says, I just think that they don't understand the climate, he said of climatologists. Their computer models are full of fudge factors. Also, the models are extremely oversimplified. They don't represent the clouds in detail at all, and they simply use a fudge factor to represent the clouds. PETA plans to fly drones that will stalk hunters. They say it's actively shopping for a drone to monitor hunters. They're going to stalk them. And it's interesting because this article just came out. I've been wanting to get to it from the April 1st. Russia mulls total ban on game hunting, which is a big, big hunting country. They may soon ban both amateur and professional hunting, only allowing indigenous peoples, remote regions, and certified rangers to hunt. So this individual, center-left politician, says that hunting is unnecessary and immoral regardless of whether one sees it as a sport or pastime or an industry, when many people call hunting is now more of a cruel hunt or a cruel killing that has nothing in common with the ancient art of fair competition between man and beast. Scientists charged with smuggling contagious germs. Canadian federal police on Wednesday charged 2 former government scientists with allegedly trafficking in dangerous and highly contagious germs. Former researchers at Canadian Food Inspection Agency are accused of attempting to export harmful pathogens that could infect humans and livestock to China. H7N9 bird flu update, 21 infected and 6 are dead now as of April 8th. So new cases of this bird flu strain in China have been reported. Deadly new bird flu virus in China possibly linked to dead pigs. Remember they had the dead pigs and dead swans and all that in the river. So it goes on here and it says that the virus mutation is a link between the dead pigs that floated past Shanghai, dead migratory birds in North China, and the deaths of 3 people. In-Vitro Eugenics is coming, predicts Australian bioethicists. So it's taking a peek in the future. They say that it will be possible to use stem cell technology to breed better humans in a petri dish. They said here at the Journal of Medical Ethics that it is not too early to launch a debate about what he calls in vitro eugenics. They said on the negative side, the people who result from the procedure would be orphaned at conception. Each generation they would be more distant from their forebears. They said that he's persuaded that adequate love and care from their social parents is sufficient to allow children to flourish socially and psychologically. But here we go. It says safety is definitely an issue. They said, of course, that they know that they've been going and testing that it was true of in vitro fertilization. So see, that's building up to get people to do that, right? First, you got to make them infertile so that they come to you to do that. Interspecies telepathy. Human thoughts make rats move. Telepathic control of another person's body is a small step closer. So by linking the technology of 2 brain-computer interfaces, human volunteers were able to trigger movement in a rat's tail using their minds. This is funny because, I'm sure this stuff already exists, whether it's a black ops or some kind of special program. Such techniques are unlikely to be applied to humans anytime soon because they require invasive surgery to implant electrodes into the brain. Well, people, they already want to do that. So you'll have volunteers. Berkeley researchers replace passwords with Passthoughts by reading your mind. In the future, instead of trying to type your mixed case numbers and punctuation on a small smartphone screen, that's why they do that, small smartphone screen. So, that eventually you're like, well, I want it implanted in me. Logging in might be as simple as thinking of your password or Passthoughts, if you will. Growing interest in electromagnetic weapons explains the military's interest in preparing defenses. Electronic warfare, the future of battle, and I know this is the current reality of battle. They pulse people already with electromagnetic frequencies. They already carry out psychotronic warfare on all of us. It's not the future, it's here, it's been here. It also explains the U.S. Navy's perhaps unconventional approach of using crowdsourcing game to find potential solutions to electromagnetic warfare, zombies in hyperspace. So even though they're talking about crowdsourcing electromagnetic cyber warfare, you can go in there and check it out. Microwave weapons, cell tower radiation experiments by Barry Trower. Also manipulation and mind control. Basically goes into silent sound spectrum. Psychotronics and the silent sound. So, and all these reports, it goes in there and talks about all of it. So I'll post a link for this. Navy unveils drone killing laser. And now they have new tiny wires, surveillance wires for police to wear. The people who brought you the taser, the headcan that turns every policeman into a RoboCop.
You can go and check it out, the video, but it's nice. They can record evidence of incidences until they turn it off.